It's an honor, and thanks to the organization, to the organizers, to invite me. Actually, I have to confess, as a non-technician, respectively as a non-data scientist, I was asked if I could give a talk or a speech on real projects in the energy sector using data and ML methods. Why? Richard just mentioned it. We are organizing the Energy Data Hack Days, and I'm a project-driven person. I said, hey, without a project, without partners, you won't get a turnaround done. So that is why I agreed and said, okay, if you don't have the expectation that I give a technical speech, I'm fine, I'm in. So I'm focusing also on the framework conditions and what it needs. I would call it the ingredients for a project to get this energy turnaround done. I would like to structure my speech in two parts. First, I would like to give you an overview and also an introduction on how we are used to handle also the topic of implementing projects, and also what it looks like on a broad level and what efforts are needed to implement actually these projects and get a return in the form of added value of the data use with the wide masses. And the wide masses are for me utilities and municipalities, because if you don't have those organizations on board, all the framework is more or less for less, because you get to use also the organizations for the implementation. In the second part, I would give a short introduction. I would assume 10 minutes for 10 to 12 selected projects which were developed and also dealt with during the Energy Data Hack Days, so that you get an idea on what we are doing within the event itself, but also what we are doing within the periods of the 12 months between the events. Why do I pronounce the event or the time period between the events? No, skip it. I will come to this point later to explain why this is important for me. First of all, let me introduce you to the Thetsukum nagobia. Actually, we are an association. It's just me. It's a one-man show. But I'm dealing with the topics of renewable energies, energy efficiency, digitalization, and transport. It's a 24/7 job. It's cool, but sometimes it's also intensive. And why do I saying this? You need to deal with people. You need to deal with organization. You need to deal with the public sector, which isn't the easiest one, because it all depends on the person and their mindset. It's not about the topic. It's not about the technical aspects. It's not about the money. It's in the end the people who decide, are we into the project or are we just go on as we are used to? So it takes another try. The TURA, the future region, was implemented as an interface from research to practice. The founding organizations used to be the sustainability part of the ETH, Nova Atlantis. It used to be the organization of Aargauer Gemeinde, the municipalities of the canton of Aargau, and 3 utilities with the focus after Fukushima to bring this topic to the utilities and the municipalities. Our goal is to support those organizations. We are focusing on non-lighthouse projects. Why? Lighthouse projects are usually done only once, and that's it. So we are established now after 5 years as an escalator, I would call myself, and also our association. So okay, what we've done one time, we can also repeat, and also only if you can repeat it, you only reach the masses. So that is our approach. So that is not the focus of a lighthouse project. But if you can repeat it and if you get other organizations on board, then you can also reach actually the turnaround. I guess all of you guys know or you are familiar with the Plan, Do, Check, Act circle. I've tried to set or to bring our situation, our constellation onto the picture. As I just mentioned in the beginning, without people, without an organization, you won't get the job done. So how do you reach those guys? Complex aspects are best explained by projects. So, and this is actually also the case I'm following since 5 years, because only if you can either explain it, you are a good lecturer, or if you can explain it to organizations how it can run and how it works, that they understand it, you only get those guys on board. So that is why I said complex aspects perfectly are explained by projects. This is the case with us. We need willing partners, communities and utilities. And therefore, we try to pick up people and organizations long time in advance. A long time in advance means usually 12 to 15 months in advance. Why? Just mentioned, if you can explain them, if you do those, or if you have those guys on board, you can deal with your concerns, you can deal with your questions, you can also handle and get the idea of a challenge. I mean, it's not about providing solutions. These two solution providers are tech companies, they provide solutions, but we are trying to go a step backward and saying, okay, what's your problem? And then we're trying to find out which solution would fit your challenge in the best way. That's actually how we deal with this Plan, Do, Check, Act circle. We have implemented the Energy Data Hack Days and a similar format called the Smart Regio Lab, using the same format, the format of a hackathon. Different people, different target group, but the same way. I just mentioned it to Esther when I gave her a sneak preview, saying, hey, my mantra is no people, no organization, no project, no turnaround. And this is actually what I'm repeating all the time. Also, if I do the project acquisition, saying, okay, I'm not against tech providers, but usually it's like if they are trying to not convince, but if you see those guys, how they acquire projects, it's not about solutions, it's about sales, my opinion. Okay, lange Rede, kurzer Sinn. Let's come to the core point. The Energy Data Hack Days. Short question and around. I assume that all of you are familiar with the format of a hackathon, aren't you? Or are people in the room who are not familiar with the format? So, actually, a hackathon is one way on how you get the approach of open innovation done. In a hackathon, different kinds of groups, target groups, participants, challenge owners, different people, different organizations come together. In our case, these are grid owners, grid operators, utilities, universities, research institutions, service providers, incubators, hubs, the public sector. So all those people in organizations who are usually dealing with the problems or with the topic. On the other side, our participants are students, programmers, designers, developers, data engineers, data analysts, data enthusiasts, experts, you name it. So all the people who are dealing with the topic, but who are not into deep involved. So actually having a topic and getting the topic discussed, introduce it to a wider group and get their opinion to the topic usually gives also the opportunity of a different point of view, different opinions, and helps by finding a solution, which is also proven that open innovation approaches and also the form of a hackathon is more or less 4 to 5 times more efficient than in-house innovation structures and procedures. So that is why more people are getting a wider point of view, and this is leading also to other approaches. Why do participants, and participants are the just mentioned organizations, why do they participate? It's about HR marketing. It's about, of course, they're interested in getting approaches for their challenges. The big ones, and also in the meantime, small and medium-sized companies use this kind of format for employee sensitization. I will show an example afterwards that a small and medium-sized enterprise would never think about participating in such a kind of format without getting guided by a university. It's about recruiting. All the companies are facing the same problems. And it's about visibility, it's about networking, and for the participants itself, it's acquisition, project acquisition. It's about hiring, finding a new job, or for students who are just before getting the graduate, finding the first employee. So it's actually a variety of reasons why people and institutions are coming together to such an event and working 42 hours on one topic. As mentioned by Richard, the Energy Data Hack Days are taking place this year for the fourth time. It's also one way from research to practice, and we are trying still to find a way to get the ideas. And that's why also you see bigger companies, smaller companies, startups, incubators, as just mentioned, on the list, saying why do they come together? They all have either an idea, they are using their own algorithm, they're using their own machine learning method, they're using their own ideas to solve other problems. And that is how we started. We started with 11 partners, and in the meantime, we do have more than 25 partners. And I'm looking forward to the fourth edition, which is taking place in the mid of September. So to make it short, and not to extend my given time, I would like now to come to the projects, to the specific examples and projects, and would just give a rough idea and overview of a bouquet of selected projects and also challenges. In the end of the presentation, I will also give a summary that you see what was the topic. All the challenges you will find also on the link 2019, 2020, and 21 are linked to the event homepage, to all the challenges, to all the documentation, to all results. So you don't need to write anything down or anything else, but follow the introduction. I would like to start with an SBB CEF. I guess everybody of you is aware of what a CEF means. But for the SBB, it was, in the meantime, 3 years ago, a goal to assess the PV potential of areas owned by the SBB. The intention was just to enter the postal code and receive all necessary items to launch a project. It's like feasible plots, the level of self-sufficiency, the PV production, peak load consumption, installation costs, everything. So they are nationally active, nationally active. So for DEER, it was interested in the beginning of this CEF area, I would call it, to see, okay, how can we make use of our data, of our inventory, of our areas, by only typing in one postal code. And it was done. It was done within only 30 hours. There was a model developed using this Swiss energy planning approach, saying, okay, SBB, we provided the solution, and the solution is now used as an internal solution for SBB real estate. It's adopted and developed. SAP now launched it, I guess it was 1 or 2 months ago, as an own product, and is provided to CEF service providers. Read your own smart meter. Read your own smart meter is actually, I will come to this point also later, because this is a two-step approach. It was an approach brought by the EKZ. And the goal of this project was to develop actually a local customer information interface and visualize the consumption. Actually, it's not that difficult. The problem is the EK set and also supercomputing systems were supposed to provide it as open source to all Swiss utilities. And they did. They found a way, they found the first solution that was finalized by supercomputing systems. It's now provided as open source to all Swiss utilities. And the Swiss Federal Office of Energy and the Association of Swiss Grid Owners are also talking about to use this method as a standard for all CIIs. And the result will be presented in the summer this year. So this is all goes back to 2020, 2 years ago, when we finally actually developed, or when participants developed this approach. Building past cloud. Philip, actually this is your project. I'm not sure whether I can present it in the way you can do. But actually 2019 was a challenge brought in by the canton of Aargau. And the problem is that we have many existing data. It's insufficient accessibility and the quality is not that good. We have multiple entries and the solution was that building owners get access to their own data, to their own building passport with all energy relevant planning basics. It's more or less done, but we also set or defined pre-steps. As I just mentioned, the Hack Days 2019, Geo-Impact and HSLU developed also an InnoCheck project out of it. We designed a concept study and now thinking about an InnoSwiss project so that we also get the last step is the verification and validation process. It's not defined yet. Optimizing district heating system. This is more or less a data-driven approach handed over by the AEW, the cantonal utility. And the target was to generate load forecasts, load schedule, and optimize peak load furnaces based on historical consumption and actual and current weather data and broadcasts. The goal was to perform the schedule with the network by exploiting the thermal mass of supplied objects, and the focus was proof and rollout. They implemented it in 25 district heating systems and want to roll out it in all the 85 existing district heating systems. So you see, it's practical approaches facing a concrete problem approach and then bring parties together. Anomaly detection. Anomaly detection, over here. Wind power prediction, sorry. The wind power prediction was brought in by the Eastern University of Applied Science, by OST. And it's about the development of machine learning algorithms or tools for an improved site-specific performance prediction. The results were used in a scientific publication this year, and it leads also to a follow-up project with a Brazil wind farm provider, and it was also brought in the 21 event again. That is also a continual process generating new results, which can be used on concrete projects on the spot. What is what will be the last, not the last one, the last one, I will come to this later. What is what? What is relatively easy? What is what was a project, a challenge brought in by the University of Applied Science of Northwestern Switzerland, and the goal of this project was to sensitize the users. How can you reach actually the energy turnaround if only experts talk about kilowatt hours, kilowatt peak loads, grid operation, peak loads? So the goal here was to make the energy usage of different activities comparable. So what does it mean if I take the train from Zurich to Olten? How many kilowatt hours are consumed, and can I compare it? So make it tangible, make it feasible, so that you compare it also with Google searches and to recharge the smartphone, etc. The focus was pure sensitization and also to get awareness arising. According to the time, I would just skip 2 further projects, but I want to go into the sneak preview. I'm not sure, it's not, we haven't talked about it before. That's why I call it a sneak preview. The sneak preview is like, last but not least, there's a consortium exists which wants to digitalize the entire energy planning process. Usually it's municipal energy planning requires extensive data collection and expert knowledge for the scenario assessment, and in most of the cases it's by far too expensive and time-consuming for the municipalities. And that is why actually most of the Swiss municipalities won't have the energy planning. We are trying to solve this problem also with a practical approach, and I keep my fingers crossed that we can realize it. And of course, you all know these are really just a rare number of projects, examples on how the energy turnaround can be managed. But keep in mind, as my mantra, you always need people in organization who are willing to do so, who are willing to use or to make use of new algorithms, who are willing to implement actually new ideas, and without them, all the brainwork is more or less for less. As mentioned, I do have a summary of the specific examples where you can also find the challenge name, the profiteer, and the added value that you say, okay, what was in for the participants, what was in for the challenge owner, and what was in for us as for the organization team. And now it's time to talk, to answer your question, and getting a feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Do we have questions? Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's really interesting, this energy hackathon concept. Also very attractive, something that I think we'd be interested to participate from University of Geneva as well. One question I did have was, how does it work with the IP when someone comes to an energy hackathon day? Other people work on it, because so now we started to talk about IP with our university services, and then lawyers get involved, and it's all a bit scary.
It's a very good question, and we were confronted with this aspect the first time last year, when actually a Swissquid showed up and said also, okay, we do need an NDA. Of course, the results, the documentation is all public, because the results, the coding is provided on the homepage of Energy Swiss or Energie Schweiz. Why? It's an open source. We generate approaches, and which can be also or shall be used a second time, a third time, so that you have a central platform where the ideas and the so far developed codes and solutions are provided. The IP. Nussbaum AG, I would like to take Nussbaum AG as an example. Last year, HSLU and Nussbaum AG brought in a joint project. It was a running project developed by HSLU and Nussbaum AG. It's a meter provider, and the solution will be used internally. But the way to it, this is the public part. But if you develop a new algorithm, a new method, it also can be dealt with a contract in advance. But usually the documentation, the coding, the way to it is open, but the result will be used internally. Same with SBB, CEF, and also the other AEW. It's a public good. The way to it, how you use it, if you adopt it, this is actually your part. But the results are open source in general.
Thank you.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, so maybe if I may follow up, I mean, this is now, as you said, you're a one-man show.
Yeah.
So this morning we learned kind of to the energy turnaround, we have a bit of way to go. So which ways would you see to scale this up, to make it bigger, to maybe make the wave even bigger than it is at the moment?
Usually the Kunst is to know people who are better than you or who can use the same ideas or who can also support you. And this is what I also tried with the Zukunftsmusik nagobia and the Energy Data Hack Days. I haven't mentioned, for time concerns, I haven't mentioned the Energy Data Working Group, which was established and founded right after the first Energy Data Hack Days. But it was also 3 years a one-man show. And suddenly there's a core team of 6 people who are supporting me by organizing 4 events. And we call this period the Olympiade. And the Olympiade is actually the time between the events to develop projects, to actually get in touch with partners, to sensitize them, bring them together, exchanging ideas. So bringing together research and the business part. This will be done in the 360 days between the event. That's why we call it also since a couple of months the Olympiade, saying, okay, our target is to build up the community, consists on research institutions, companies, and also other organizations, talking about a question, a topic, and then also to think about, okay, how can we deal with the problem? It's not only me. So I wouldn't call me the puppet master, by far not. But to organize it and bring people together and then to see, okay, how suddenly there's a spirit into the group, into the community. This is what leads to the project and to the ideas.
Do we have another question?
Yes, thanks for your presentation. Maybe I would have a more general question since you've been in the field for a while now. You said that people are often a problem and you have to convince them. So do you have, like, I don't know, an idea of tools that you could use, maybe regulation or how do you make people play with you in a sense?
Actually, it's not a big deal. It's also not a secret. If you can find out the weak point, or not a weak point, but to find the target point, to say, okay, where does it hurt? Where can I support you? It's not like I said in the beginning, I won't provide a solution. Because if I just enter the room and say, okay, I do have a solution for you guys, I can turn around and say, okay, that's it. Listen to people, listen to them, 2 meetings, having a beer or water. No, but listen to them. And then if you are in the area or in the sector, like public transportation or the public sector in general, service public, if you know, okay, or if you also know what they want to reach, offer solutions. Or saying, okay, I'm supporting you. Because if they want to reach something, you don't need to do so much. You're just a support, which is appreciated, and then it also works. But it takes at least 3 to 4 months, 6 months. Saying, okay, getting in touch and seeing, okay, where does it hurt? Where can I be a problem solution, or provide a solution to their problem? And that's what I meant with in the beginning. No solution, or it's not a technical part, but we are solving problems. And solving a problem, this is appreciated. It's not acquisition, it's solving a problem.
Thank you very much. One last question. If not, I have a question for you, Matthias. You mentioned before you talked to a lot of people also in the context of the energy strategy and with the municipalities. Where do you feel personally lies the biggest challenge for the turnaround in the energy sector?
It's a wide field, and the problem is the people are also not narrow-minded, but narrow-minded by job. Usually they are trying to see only their own solution and not to see actually their contribution to a bigger problem. And on the one hand side, you have the movements like also the Smart City Association or the Smart City Alliance. You have, they are all talking about people and do the networking. They're also trying to do this approach, bring people together, organizations together. But it's about you need to catch up. Actually, go back 2 steps, 3 steps. Getting actually get the masses on board. You need the lighthouse projects. Of course, you need to talk about those projects. You need to sensitize. You can use them. But in the end, if you want to make the turnaround, you need to have the masses on board. And the masses are people like you and me, people like you see at 5 p.m. in the subway, saying, okay, I'm just a zombie and want to go home. These are the masses. And therefore, you need to attract their attention and get them on board, and the municipalities, because they are in charge of the turnaround. All the providers are only technical providers or technology providers, but the implementation is done by the cantons and or by the municipalities and utilities.